Hello, everybody. Welcome to Watches with Dennis. I am back with my Saturday live stream. And today we are going to talk about a brand I basically never discuss, and that is Fossil. But we're not just going to talk about Fossil, the like how Swatch is Swatch and their Swatch group. We're going to talk about Fossil Group, or in this case, Fossil Global Services Limited, because there's very interesting, I think interesting, bankruptcy aspects that have been triggered that I think are worth talking about because I think part of the reason for this is we don't talk too much about Fossil as watch enthusiasts. So, anyway, that will be today's topic. No real housekeeping items to discuss. I hope everyone had a really good Halloween. Kevin, thank you for the email regarding Halloween. Much appreciated. And I have tons of leftover candy. Maybe many of you do as well. I don't know. My just as an aside, my Halloween flow, like the kid flow, there's like not much rhyme or reason to it. So I had two groups, five total. Last year was my lowest ever with one person, period. But it's not like it's just declined over the years. I've had as many as around 30. And my sister, whose house is about maybe 2.5 miles away from me, 65 was her last count that she had. So who knows? She is in a neighborhood where you would think the candy would be better than mine. Let's just put it that way. But anyway, enough of the finer things. On the wrist today is once again the Flower Bay swatch. I basically only wear it on the weekends. Haven't put together the video about it yet. Probably will do that here within the next couple of weeks or so if I can stay motivated to do it. Let's see. Rob, good morning. Hope things are going well for you. Thank you also for being a 99 Set Club member. Much appreciated. And Skylar, thank you for listening and not watching while driving, but just listening. Very, very appreciated. But then says, lovely weekend watch. So now I'm worried that you may be watching while driving. Be safe, people. Be safe. Okay. Speaking of safety, Falso Group, not so safe lately. So let's go ahead and jump in. I do have a link to this art. There are lots of articles about this. So I just linked to The Street, which was one of the first ones that showed up on my Google search, but feel free to pull from any, variety of sources that you might like. But so Fossil has filed for Chapter 15 bankruptcy. And if you're like me, even if you've followed bankruptcies before, Chapter 15 is, you're probably like, what? Chapter 15? What? No, come on. You meant 11, right? No, I don't mean 11. So here's what's going on. So as of, I believe, October 20th, Fossil Global Services Limited, which is based, I'm doing my quotes, based in the United Kingdom, has filed in the United States for relief under Chapter 15 of U.S. Bankruptcy Code. So what the filing indicates is they want U.S. recognition of a restructuring plan, but the restructuring plan isn't under U.S. law, it's under U.K. law. And that's why it's Chapter 15. So Chapter 15 lets a U.S. Or lets a company where a foreign creditor gets to be recognized in the U.S., but some of the stuff, clearly they want to do the restructuring under a different nation's laws. This has led to a lot of speculation because their decision to be based out of, I may mispronounce this, but Milton Keynes area is where they've kind of reorganized. That was very recent. So the suspicion is, and I think the suspicion is well grounded, that they're forum shopping and they feel that the restructuring laws in the United Kingdom are more favorable to the United States. I don't think this article that I'm sharing with you goes into that. I did find another one that did attempt to dive in and explained that it had to do with shareholders in the U.S. If you do a bankruptcy, they're basically the last to be paid. So normally, when a company and I've had stock in a company that went, and I don't just mean like an index. Like I used to buy some penny stocks, and one of those failed, just like outright failed, and had to declare bankruptcy. And I still had like 100 shares in it. So basically, long story short, in the U.S., if bankruptcy happens, the shareholders are at the bottom of the list to get paid. And generally that means the shareholders get absolutely nothing because there's so much debt. You're not done paying all that off before you even would get to your shareholders. So I believe under UK law, there are ways to restructure where the shareholders can retain some value. So that would be the reason why they're interested in doing that. But that's neither here nor there. I think the more interesting thing to us as watch aficionados is why this is the case. So in terms of what the plan is, so it is a restructuring plan. They want about $150 million worth of unsecured, what they call senior notes, which are due November 30th of next year. And that's what Fossil wants to restructure. So anyway, they're trying to move forward with that, and it's not really very surprising. So Fossil, according to the information that I've seen, has and I as if you've followed them, you've probably known for a while, their performance has been pretty weak lately. 2024, they had recorded about $1.1 billion in sales, which sounds great, except they it still ended up with a loss of about 106 million US dollars. So that was versus prior years, which had even higher sales and smaller losses, but losses nonetheless. So they've been on this route for a while now. So why should we care? Because as I mentioned at the start, I can't remember the last time I've spoken about Fossil because I don't know enthusiasts who like Fossil as a brand. It doesn't come up very much. Now, again, this is Fossil Global Services. So we're talking about a number of, and I'll show you the flagship Fossil website. I have a link to that as well in the show notes. So you can see some of what, when people say Fossil, this is like the sort of stuff you're going to think about. It's the stuff that's literally branded Fossil. But Fossil does actually own a few other brands. There's Michelle. That's a fashion watch brand company aimed for women. There's Skagen, a Danish designed brand. I don't really know much about them. There's Relic, which a lot of the Relic watches have a pretty heavy tie to Fossil, if I remember right. I think I had a Relic watch at one point as kind of a throwaway watch on one of my Alaska trips, which had a picture of a swimmer on it, if I'm remembering right. And then I just submerged it into a creek and it ended up getting water damage. So apparently the little water swimmer guy did not mean it was actually water resistant, or it was a not properly functioning watch. But anyway, neither here nor there yet again. And then finally, Zodiac, which has been the one context that we have regularly, and I still use that pretty loosely, talked about, because Zodiac is a Swiss heritage watch brand, well known for being one of the first to really go into that dive market that got really hot in the 1960s. And of course, it's like the one thing on the list here that deals in mechanical movements, or at least almost. They have had some quartz in the past, and they may still do quartz, but Zodiac is a primarily mechanical movement watch brand. I don't know about these other ones. I think they're all either entirely or primarily quartz, though. But that's not all that Fossil Group does. So they also have manufacturing and distribution rights for a whole lot of fashion brands, and so we're talking fashion watches. So you already hear the red flag about why this company has struggled so much. Michael Kors, they have a long-term partnership with them. They have licensed relationships with Diesel, with Kate Spade, Armani, the Imperial Armani Exchange. Those Fossil makes their watches. DKNY. So anyway, so that's really what we're at when we're talking about Fossil, the entire group. So there is yes, this flagship Fossil, but they have a bunch of sub brands that of various degrees of popularity. Well, except we're talking bankruptcy, right? So popularity is basically nil. People have not been interested into this. So why is that the case? And that's what I wanted to talk about with you all on the live stream today, to get your guys' thoughts. And then, of course, if you're watching the recording, feel free to comment below. And that's that. And I can throw up images if we need to as we go along here, but there's really not much else to say. I just figured this would be a fun topic to discuss in a realm that we wouldn't normally dive much into. So I think fundamentally, when I was kind of doing that primer on Fossil, thanks to the powers of the article that I have linked below from the street regarding the bankruptcy aspects, AI culling through analyzing the ownership structure, all this on Wikipedia too, if you want to see all the brands that they control and stuff. That's probably the easiest place to get at it all. There's probably a Fossil Group main page, but I'm not familiar with it if it's as nicely summarized as, say, Swatch is. But ultimately, I think the issue that Fossil has run into is they are a fashion watch brand, and that's why they're in such a difficult space at this point, because so many other brands let's start with the issue about where they are in the price point, right? Because I think that fundamentally is the issue. you have all of these lower cost watches. And I don't even mean fossil watches. We could or fashion watches. We could say which include fossil, but you've got fossil, you've got like Seiko fives, you've got other drugstore watches. Little less expensive models that are maybe just think under $500. Let's just use that broadly. And I don't mean micro brands. I mean stuff that you can walk into a mall and buy, stuff that you can walk into sort of a corner store. By that I mean like a corner mall store, like you think of Dillard, what is it? Dillard's, not Dillon's. Dillon's is a grocery store. Dillard's or J.C. Penney or whatever, and the sort of watches that they would carry. That's where a lot of fossil, and not just fossil proper, but fossil groups brands. That's the space that they occupy. Well, we all know what has come in that's pressured all of that. It's the smartwatch industry. So you've got smartwatches that have put a lot of pressure on the space that used to be the space to be in if you wanted to make money as a watch manufacturer. That was Seiko space, that was Citizen space, that was Fossil space. Go in, nice looking watch, don't really care about the movement. It's probably your only one. The space where Fossil was different than some of those other brands is they really leaned in on fashion labels like Kate Spade and such to try and get people, oh yeah, I want the name on the dial, even though all the watches look the same as all the other Fossil watches. It's like, I want the name on the dial. And that was the motivation. And there's still a space with that. But remember what's come up underneath it are things like the Danielle Wellingtons and Movement and those other brands that also are fashion watches, are also overpriced, but also got into the cultural zeitgeist thanks to things like Instagram and all the rest of it that made them really, really popular. So Fossil's sort of stuck. Like they're in that space where they're getting, I mean, it's not really the Danielle Wellingtons that are the problem for them. It's the smartwatches. So what normally have brands done that were also in that space? Well, brands like Seiko, Citizen, and the like have pivoted the strategy, right? They've pivoted to appealing to those of you who are watching this, those of you who actually know things about watches, like to own more than one watch, are interested in the topic of watches. And so they've turned to the enthusiast, just like how all the micro brands survive. Micro brands are not making their money on casual watch buyers. They make their money off collectors and enthusiasts. And that is the strategy that Seiko has done, Orient has done. We're seeing, there's a reason why Citizen is launching more and more mechanical-based movement watches outside of Japan now. It's working for them. How many people have you seen on Watch Crunch or on a watch forum or on Reddit or whatnot that have shown you that they have a Tsuyosa? The Tsuyosa success is that it's mechanical and it's enthusiast forward. And it comes in fun colors and all the rest of it, just like, but if you want a fun color watch, you can go and buy a Swatch for under $100. It's not going to have the build quality of a Citizen. Fossil hasn't really turned to that sort of thing. Let's hop back to the main Fossils page here that I do have linked in the show notes. So, all right, here's this green one, kind of has a vibe of a Citizen, I suppose. Aesthetically, we've got this kind of, this look to it. It's cheap. It's less than $300. Looks like we could see a piece of the movement. So here's an example of one where they actually have some sort of mechanical movement going on in it. I'm not quite sure what movement powers this watch. No, I don't want to say 15% off on your bankrupt company. Thank you. So they've got some stuff like this, but nobody cares. Like the enthusiast community has never embraced Fossil. I know some of you own Fossils. I think I don't count it as part of my collection. I have watches I worked on during the pandemic, and I've received like baggies of watches that people didn't want and stuff. And so if I don't, fix them up or size them to me, I don't really count them as mine, so to speak. So I think I've got a bag somewhere that's got some old dead quartz Fossil in it. I'm now curious about this movement. So I bet you it's not going to tell us. I bet you. All right. I bet it'll just at best say that it's mechanical. It just says automatic 3-hand. That's what it says is the movement. Great. Okay. So we could probably zoom in if we had a good enough photo and try and figure it out, but it's neither here nor there. So that's where I feel that Fossil has stumbled, is they have not successfully, I don't even know if they've tried to turn to the enthusiast community. You could say they have products like what we're looking at on the screen that are trying to appeal to the enthusiast community. But as a brand strategy, they haven't done it the way that Seiko, like Seiko was known for their quartz movements. They're all about, they still make quartz watches, but they're all about promoting the mechanical stuff now because that's what the enthusiasts want. Same thing for what Citizen's trying to do. And where they get a lot of attention on their quartz, the Japanese brands have played in high accuracy quartz as well. So they've got another appeal there that has done a lot to really resonate with folks. So that to me is sort of the main aspects at play. But I'll get caught up with the chat and I'll talk a little bit about where they have pivoted maybe to a degree with some of their sub brands. But Trap Vision, good morning. Welcome. Glad you can make it. Thomas with the Escapement Show. I saw you had to stream this. I was asleep until an hour ago. I don't know why I was so exhausted, but I slept way in today. So, but hopefully I'm exhibiting enough energy that you think it was worth it. So I wasn't able to catch your stream, but I hope it went well for you. Koji, thank you for being a 99-cent club member. Says Fossil and its different iterations did seem to function as a gateway for later enthusiasts. Definitely, but we could say the same for anyone who, like my first, I'm going to use my air quotes again, nice watch was a quartz chronograph from Citizen. Sure, a lot of people started with that or with Timex or with, a lot of people though have started with brands that are known to be brands that are very popular still with watch enthusiasts. Swatch watches, Seiko watches, Citizen watches. Those are and Timex. Those four I say are pretty common for people to start with, to have memories with, even as adults, maybe starting with one of those four. And they're still readily embraced as enthusiast watches. Maybe they're not like grails for people, but that's more of a victim of price point, as any grail rule would be. An easy to acquire watch doesn't, we don't really talk about the quest for an Orient Bambino. There's no quest. There's plenty of them. But Fossil, I agree with you that a lot of people have started with it. But unlike these other four, that's why he's the thumb. That's why I'm using the thumb. It just doesn't have that extra knuckle to have remained something that would still be respected amongst enthusiasts for whatever reason. And I don't really know what that reason is. I blame the brand not appropriately popularizing itself. And again, I do know there are enthusiasts that do occasionally, they do either have fossils or they've found fossils. There was an article I think it was within the last month. I don't remember which watch site it was, which said, like, the headline was, "Finally a fossil I actually want." And it was like, but that is a statement that someone would make, tells you a lot, I think, about the perception of a brand in the world that we occupy, the enthusiast world. Trapfish says Fossil was a cultural gold mine back in the 90s. They meant so much more then, and now it's apparent that growing as consumers change wasn't a part of the plan. I think fundamentally, Trap is exactly right here. This looks like a brand that has been unable to, or probably more likely, in my opinion, refused to pivot. And there have been warning signs for years. And again, as I noted in kind of my intro spiel about the bankruptcy proceedings, Fossil, their loss of over $100 million in 2024, that was not their first loss. They have been losing money for years. It's gotten worse for years. They've lost more and more, and their sales have fallen. And yes, that they still sell over $1 billion worth of product in a year sounds awesome. But it doesn't matter if you're still pulling, like that is, their profit is negative. Their revenue is almost irrelevant. So they've had plenty of time to know that they're in trouble. And obviously any change in strategy takes quite a while, but so far it's been ineffective. And I don't know that doing Chapter 15 and doing a restructure under UK law is going to save this, because I still don't have a feel, other than buying time, have they understood what they need to do to save themselves as a group? Because I think the answer on the strategies that will work is there, but I just don't know even with more time, that they'll be able to implement it, or maybe they're still blind to what they would maybe need to do. I'm not sure. What do you guys think? Pretu says, Fossil captured me in the early years. I will give them that at least. Their stores and malls really created an approachable atmosphere that a jewelry store or a high-end boutique didn't mimic for kiddos. Sure, and I'm reminded of, that's where I think, we often talk about like mall watches, and it's a fairly derogatory style term, but there is always something to be said about the watch counter at Walmart, or even at the nicer store, again, air quotes, nicer stores like Nordstrom's or Dillard's or JCPenney, or maybe you could argue in between those spaces would be Sears. where you could go. They have those counters. The watches are all maybe a couple hundred, few $100s at most, but they look nice. They're under the nice lights. They're better than what you're going to go pick up at the drugstore. And they had a heft to them and all of that. And there they were. They were very, because the clientele was not a clientele that was into watches, and wasn't a clientele that necessarily had a whole lot of money. So the strategy wasn't like a commission sales strategy, is what I think part of it was, is that what you bought was just how it worked. Like if you bought Doritos at the store, or in most of these stores cases, it'd be more like, or buying a shirt or a tie. Like the sales reps weren't like swarming around like they were in the men's suits stores, where it was like they were trying to make those sales because they got a commission on those suits. I assume with the watches and stuff there wasn't one. So I think that probably helped to a degree, but I don't know. But yes, definitely a very approachable play. And a lot of people don't like it's still, even after all these years, I still don't love going into a watch store and asking about trying on watches. I do it because I know, hey, they want to make money. So I don't expect that I need to behave a certain way, but it's still present, all the way down to me considering what watch I will wear into the store, because I'm wondering if the one I wear conveys that I'm interested in the particular brand I want to ask about, or if it will send a message to them that, oh, he might actually have the money to buy the watch or whatever. Those analyses still happen, and I wish they didn't, actually, because I would prefer to do it like how it would be at the Dillards, where it'd just be like, I don't even need to wear a watch to go into this place. They're going to sell me whatever I want. So interesting thing. Jeremy, our newest 99-cent club member, welcome to the live stream. Hope you are enjoying it. Says, I had a fossil back in the late 90s. It was rugged. It was a rugged evolution from the Movado I had. Movado is another interesting, I don't know that they're in bankruptcy trouble. Movado is another interesting brand that it had a hit, and they've really struggled to pivot away from that hit. Donters says, I think a big factor with Fossil's respectability is that it wasn't founded until 1984. A lot of other mall brands have been around a lot longer, Timex, Seiko, Citizen, etc., so they can claim historical relevance. A point I had not considered, but definitely a point that could be a big role in the view of collectors. We do have a fondness for the history behind watches, broadly speaking. That being said, there are a lot of micro brands that have shown you can be hot and be new. So, all right, Seiko can't be the new hot thing because it's not new. And it can't be a legacy brand because they ain't got 100 years under its belt yet. But that doesn't mean it can't achieve respectability. It just needs a watch that is of interest. And we've seen this with high-end brands like Moser, older name, it's under new management. How do we interpret that? You could say the same with Chopek. We want a cleaner example. Parmigiani Fleurier, very respected watchmaker, not an old brand, as an example of something that's sort of newer and clearly identified, because it doesn't try and poach a name from history and pretend like it's been around forever and ever. But again, it takes work, and brands like Parmigiani aren't exactly like at the top of the pile. Like, there's a reason why those watches trade for less used. They don't have a hype piece that's harder to get, not after the pandemic, than it, versus what you could buy at retail. You'll save on almost anything that they make if you just wait. Koji says, same, Dennis. I always get very self-conscious about what watch to wear, depending on the boutique and store. Yeah, I don't like being influenced by other individuals to that degree, but human psychology is human psychology. Now, we talked a little bit about how I think that Fossil's issue here, their big struggle, the bankruptcy, all of this, is that they're so entrenched in the fashion watch space that now that they have this huge downward pressure, I don't mean to look like punching it, huge downward pressure on them from the smartwatch industry. And you've got other fashion watch brands that are cheaper than them, depending. I mean, Fossils aren't exactly expensive. I mean, even that mechanical watch I had up on the screen was less than $300. They got all sorts of stuff that's like under $200 and all the rest of it. So they're very, I would say, you could argue they're very competitively priced for what the watch is. But they, the idea of pivoting to a thing that watch enthusiasts will really get into. They have tried in one instance. I don't have a link to the show notes in this, but if you want to go there, it's zodiacwatches.com. So Fossil's group owns Zodiac. And Zodiac is the one example of their Fossil, Michelle, Skagen. I don't know much about Skagen, but again, it's we don't ever hear people talk about it. And Relic. So Zodiac, though, that's the one that is targeted towards watch enthusiasts. We actually read about these watches fairly regularly in the watch press. A lot of watch enthusiasts have owned Zodiac watches. I've owned a Zodiac watch. So there is one element where Zodiac, I feel, has tried to be its own thing in a watch community space. Big focus on automatic movements. Cost certifications are available. They've got complications. They have had in the past, and probably I don't know if they still have them in the current production catalog, but probably got some quartz watches there as well. And it's a legacy name. It's their one legacy name that, again, while they are not the original operators of Zodiac, they have, as I'm showing on the screen, leaned in big time into the designs that people know about. So they've got their divers, they've got their the super sea wolves, which is what I had owned at one point. So that's the one thing that they've got that is trying to appeal to the watch enthusiast. The problem, I think, is sort of threefold. One, Zodiac doesn't make very many watches. It's actually a lot smaller than I realized. I should do a quick search here while I'm talking. Well, I can't have the little thingy zoomed in at that point here. I'll let you have a bigger view of the dial here. But it's been a while since I read about it. Watch sales. I should have looked at this ahead of time. I didn't think about talking about this with you guys. Let's see. AI says that they measure in the thousands. They were making about 9,000 units in 2022, which was quite an upsurge. They'd made 6,000 in 2021. Now, well, the issue is 2022, we were still kind of coming out of the pandemic. So I bet you while their production might be stable, their sales are almost assuredly down from where they were at. But all right, so we have a brand, low sales count, but less than 10,000 units a year. So, okay, that means it's not a very big piece of the portfolio. Second, well, the watches are like price wise, they're in a difficult bucket, right? Okay, so I'm showing you a $1,700 watch right now on their website. So we're getting near like the Tudor 1926 in price. Now, this is more complicated than a Tudor 1926 in the sense that you get a dive bezel in the example I was showing you, but they're in this entry-level luxury space that on paper, I think probably makes a lot of sense, but like this, here's a $5,000, it's gold plate. Nobody wants gold plate anymore. Like, why do a plated watch? Either, or filled for that matter, either do solid 18 karat gold or PVD it. Who wants to spend $5,000 on a Zodiac? It's a weird, hey, maybe they want to do it as an experiment. I was pretty judgmental of the Tudor Black Bay 58 that was made in solid gold because I didn't know who wanted to spend 5 figures for a Tudor. But hey, maybe someone liked it. But they basically lean a lot into the Super Seawolf and the fun colors. I was going to give you 3 points, and now I've rambled so much, I'm not quite sure where I was going with it other than I think my issues with why I don't think this has saved the company is the production count's too low, the popularity is too low, and the pricing isn't high enough, nor could they really make it higher, that just selling a few units is going to make a big difference to their company. My problem with Zodiac is that having owned one, the QC was not good. I had 2 of the watermelon Super Seawolves. The first one I tried to regulate myself, which was 1, stupid, and 2, my own fault. But the regulator stud snapped with the screwdriver. I went to a watchmaker. My local watchmaker wouldn't service it because it uses the Fossil STP movement and not just an ETA or a Solita. And then I contacted I bought it new online, but I bought it new. And they were like, because there was contamination on the dial as well, the paint, it wasn't this colorway, but essentially where you see the chapter ring and the bezel, the chapter ring's paint was in the center of the dial, like where this silver is, you'd see bits of orange. It was sloppy, not to mention the dust on the dial, which you know how us and collectors, I've been more forgiving of dust lately, but I was like, it was over $1,000. I was frustrated. And they were like, oh, this is I just remember the company I bought it from said, This is a common issue with Zodiacs. We don't care that you tried to regulate the watch yourself. Send it back. We will send you another one. We have 4 others. We will open the boxes and we will send you the one that looks the best. Not the perfect, the best. And I got another one, and the paint issue wasn't there. There was still some contamination, dust contamination. And eventually I just sold the watch because it kind of soured me to it. Fun watch. I liked the bezel play. I liked the bracelet is one of the best bracelets I feel in watches, much less for the price point. They do this butterfly clasp, and I'm going to zoom in so you can see me, so you can see my hands, but it kind of has elastic in it. So the butterfly actually, it's like an elastic. It actually stretches a little bit. So having a fit that doesn't feel too tight is really reasonable. It's almost like those stretchy band watches, but it's only on that one part. So it's not going to grab your arm hair or anything. It's a really good design idea, but just like they have them, their in-house movement. Nobody cares about their in-house movement. Nobody cares. Like everyone's like, why don't you just use a Solita at this point? But they had to use their Solita clone and all the rest of it. And so anyway, I think they're stuck. This is their best shot. This assortment of, here's the one I had, by the way. This is the model I owned. But the prices are just, they're too high for the usual fossil consumer. And it's okay to have that because you're trying to break into an enthusiast space. But there are a lot of enthusiast watches that can do all of whatever this is. You're paying a lot for Zodiac on the dial, is what I'm saying. It just got to be a little, because they don't make that many watches, getting your favorite colorway got to be a little bit difficult. They have limited editions and stuff too, and all the right. They've tried the strategies with Zodiac. I'm not going to say it's not working because their production counts did go up. I just don't think it's worked well enough, and there's just a lot of pressure at this price point. I mentioned Tudor, but I think one of you in the chat, actually it's going to be Tempest time that I'll jump to, has mentioned Longines, so we'll hit on that as well. But I want to go ahead and get caught up with the chat first. Skylar says, my most prized watch in my collection is a Fossil Diver I've owned for 19 years. I admittedly have not worn it in a while, worn it a whole lot, but it still ticks well. Excellent. Good. I mean, I've not really heard a lot on Fossil's quality, like critiques of Fossil's quality, like you might hear about Yema, for example. So good to hear that it's still running. Skylar continues, from my experience posting about it on Watch Crunch, most enthusiasts are not huge fans of the brand. I definitely agree the brand, along with Movado, should have or still should pivot to something more appealing. I agree. I'm not sure what they can pivot to at this point. They've let themselves slip so far for so long. Their name, does it have enough cachet? Possibly. Fossil's a known entity, but honestly, the pivot into I'll use the word decommission. Let's sort of decommission Fossil proper, the brand watches that say Fossil on the dial, the ones that we were talking about here, and pivot away from that thing as being our moneymaker and try and build up with their Santos clones, clearly, and try and appeal more to using Zodiac, because Zodiac's the one thing they've got that has any cachet broadly with the watch enthusiast community, because of that heritage name that got talked about earlier, that history. Yeah, no, Zodiac may not be the oldest company either, but it's older than anything else as a name that Fossil controls. So there is that. Tempest Time says, in this price range, I would rather have a Longines. See, and that's the struggle. That's the struggle even with Zodiac, is like you've got Longines got so many more different designs. I've owned a Zodiac. I've not owned a Longines, but Longines has multiple designs I like. They're competing in the same price point. With Zodiac, it feels kind of one trick. It's not all the Super Seawolf. I know that's what I've been showing you. They do have a few other things, but it's all dive watch. Like that's pretty much their whole strategy. Like they've got the C-Chron, the chronograph thing that they do. They've got some GMT versions of their watches, but they've all got these dive bezels on them. So you got the Super Seawolf GMT. If you want the even more vintagey looking thing, they've got this. They've got the Super Seawolf skin divers. I've been kind of tempted to the design here, but again, it's like $1,600. It's an awful lot for this even more classic design dial. I think it looks sharp, So I feel a little bad for them because even though they have a few different dial configurations, they're basically, and I get it because of Zodiac's history, so I understand why Fossil did it, but they're basically the dive watch company. It's basically all they do. It's like Panerai. They got two things: the radio mirror and then whatever the other one was that everyone likes. I kind of like the radio mirror more, but I'm blanking because I'm not a huge Panerai fan. But you know what I mean. Panerai is basically they got like 2,000 SKUs of two different models. That's their whole look. They've never pivoted to anything else. They don't know how to pivot to anything else, I suppose. But Longines does know. Like you might think of Pilot watches with Longines, but they've got a lot of really approachable dive watches that are way cheaper than anything Zodiac has. And then they've got all the fancy stuff that they've been coming out with. There's just Longines is a very interesting company. So you've got pressure from them a lot. I'd say more so for Zodiac there than Tudor, but some of the Zodiacs are up at the Tudor price point too. And both of those brands are just broadly more desirable than Zodiac is at this point. Skylar says, I agree with the plating, except for the electroplating gold on a dial is fine for me. Comes out very nice. Yeah, I'm not. So my anti-plating is mostly driven by that it marks up the pricing quite a bit, and you're still going to probably scuff it away. That's my frustration with plate. So if you're going to have, like, I have a gold colored plate watch. It was my dad's old Seiko, and you can see the steel in the bezel where over the years he's scuffed it away before he gave it to me. So like it's just going to happen with any sort of coating. A dial being protected assures that that's not an issue. Just like I'm fine with a stainless steel watch that has gold hands. Rolex does that all the time. Like I think all of their stuff at this point has gold hands on it. You can't even tell they're gold, but hey, it works fine. I think gold plate can look really nice, but so can gold PVD, quite frankly. If you've never checked out some of the gold, modern gold PVD Seikos, like if you want a gold looking watch and you don't want to pay gold prices, go ahead and take a look at them. Just be aware that that you can, it's simple scratches that would normally just be in your steel watch. They're going to get through that coating pretty quickly. All that said, it can always be re-electroplated, including with gold. You can re-electroplate the gold. There are guides online. I would outsource it personally because it's my understanding is those chemicals are toxic in terms of the fumes, but plating is not a hard process. So you can always have it replated if it does end up getting all damaged. Donter says, I've been seriously thinking about getting a vintage Zodiac astrographic. It's such a unique concept. Nobody talks about that watch. It reminds me of an Etch-a-Sketch. I don't know anything about this watch. I've never heard of it before. So anyway, if you get it, let us know. It will be interesting. I'll have to look up some images. M. Cardle says, problem with Zodiac is that they kept their prices while switching from ETA movements to the cheaper STP Chinese-based movements. While most brands looking for ways to innovate, they just stagnate. While most of the brands looking for ways to innovate, they just stagnated. Yeah, the STP I get it because it's I've done air quotes like 20,000 times this episode. I apologize. It lets them, because Fossil owns it, it lets them call it an in-house movement. There was a time where that probably would move units. There's not a ton of sympathy in this day and age for ETA clone in-house movements, and I get it. They're not the only ones. I mean, Timex, their Atelier collection, it's not in-house, but they're using a clone of the Solita, which is a clone of the ETA to drive those movements. And honestly, they would all Zodiac, Timex, they would get more mileage just dropping Solitas in, honestly. I know people get so frustrated with the SW200 and the hand widening issues to no end, but like the Solita name, at least you have the confidence that any watchmaker, if you live near any of them, like even the most basic one, is probably going to be able to service your Solita. The parts are so easy to get. So you could service your Solita. You'd probably be like, I'll buy the parts all day and just keep breaking them, and I'll eventually figure it out. You could probably do that. So yes, I like STP. This ain't Vacheron, guys. This is Zodiac. This is nobody. I shouldn't say nobody cares, but I'm going to do that for dramatic effect. Nobody cares, right? There's a reason why these are close to case-back watches. They're not showing off the movements, okay? Like we're not expecting gold here. So just use a third-party movement. Don't even emboss it. Don't even make any modifications. Just drop in a straight-up third-party movement. We see plenty of micro brands do it. Works just fine for them. Why do you have to try and be different? I assume they did this because it saved them money. And that fits very much with what what M. Cardle has said about, they kept their prices the same, but they pivoted. Because I remember when the GMT watches were coming out, they were using non-STP movements. I don't remember if they were ETA or Solita, but they were using one of those two for the GMTs. It was those of us who bought the three-handers who got stuck with the STPs. But of course, the desire was to keep more and more money in. And hey, they're bankrupt now. They were doing what they could do. So M. Cartel continues. I used to own a Super Seawolf GMT with the Soprard movement, and maybe it was Soprard and it wasn't a Solita. I never really looked at the GMTs because I wasn't interested in them. But anyway, so back to the comment. I used to own a Super Seawolf GMT with the Soprard movement, and they even discontinued it and went with the STP. They kept the same price and went with the Chinese movement. Okay, I thought I had heard that they had switched over for even those watches, but I'm not surprised. But I am shaking my head in disappointment. Dontrus continues about the astrographic. Has minutes, hours, and seconds hand that appear to be magically floating around the dial. Check it out. So we will check it out. Zodiac. What are we going to call it? We're going to call it what you called it. Astrographic. Interesting name. I think eBay may have one. Will we buy it right now? We won't, because I don't think this is a watch for me. But all right. I'm not on screen share anymore. Here we go. So it's this. Oh, I see what you mean. Do they have a closer photo? eBay guy, do better photos. We need a close photo. I don't care about okay. If I was buying it, I would care about the size. I'm not gonna be too critical of that. Okay, I see what you mean. Yeah, you can't. Yeah, the hands look like they're floating. That is interesting. I get why you get the Etch-a-Sketch vibe to it. Even the seconds hand. You can't see, it doesn't look like there are hands connecting them. They just float. Okay, that is interesting. Huh. No, I don't think I have ever seen this model before. I've seen a lot of vintage Zodiac, but not this. Just like the traditional Seawolves and stuff, I suppose is what I've been subjected to. So he does, Dontrus does note that he thinks Mr. Jones has a model that does the same thing as the astrographic. Interesting. Maybe the astrographic coming back could save Fossil. They'd have to sell a lot of them, though. So anyway, that's all I really wanted to cover today. I think Fossil's restructuring, personally, you want a prediction? I don't think it's going to work. I don't think Fossil can pivot appropriately. The demand from the brands that they do produce for, so we're talking like the Armani Exchange, Kate Spade, Diesel, those contracts, I mean, maybe if they can reduce their costs, so we're talking like big downsizing efforts, they'll probably be able to limp along for a while, because I imagine those brands still want to have some traditional style watches, non-smart watches, and that's who their relationships are with. So if they can sustain their production capabilities and scale down in some other way, I'm not quite sure where they're gonna do it. I don't see how they can adjust in any way that's going to successfully keep them going. They could try and spin some of that stuff off. What I would do is I guess what I would say, with my vast, watch, I'm rolling my eyes because I have no vast watch business experience, would be, maybe spin it almost all of it down, spin it down or off. So let's see, we've got the flagship brand, we got Michelle, we've got Skagen, we've got Relic, and we've got Zodiac. Zodiac maybe could be successful if they. So I don't know, as a group, if you say Fossil becomes just Zodiac and they give up everything else, or what a lot of businesses would do. Like, this is what some of the rumors were with Microsoft with Xbox, was maybe they'd spin Xbox off as its own business, and then it would just operate in the gaming space separate from Microsoft. We see, those sort of spin-offs of subsidiaries all the time. Typically, you spin off your underperforming subsidiary, and the corporate conglomerate keeps the working stuff. In this case, I would say it's tough. I would say spin off Relic, Skagen, and Michelle, and maybe just keep the flagship brand and Zodiac, and then spend most of your efforts trying to grow Zodiac, and then just use the sales on the flagship Fossil and the production capabilities to do your fashion brand collaborations with Armani and such, as long as you can. And then maybe you end up with a much smaller, less valuable company that is in the mechanical space where Zodiac hypothetically could thrive. I'm going to take a page out of Daunters here and say, uh, mine more of your back catalog, not just the Seawolf, the Seawolf, Super Seawolf. Yes, keep doing them, keep doing different colorways, but there's only so far you can go. There's only so many complications people want on a dive watch. So don't be like doing gold plate and stuff. Instead, do the astrographic, do some of the other designs, and then maybe try and come up with some original stuff too. Don't just mind the back catalog. Like, the watch industry is down right now, so this is not a great time to do a pivot. Like, to try and save a company, I should say, but it is an opportunity to try and stand out. So their colorways in the dive watch space, no one does colors like them that comes to my mind, other than Zodiac. Excuse me, other than Doxa. Except Doxa always does the same colors on all of their watches. It feels like you get different fun combinations. I thought it was a very fun strategy. Do you guys remember? I think it was last summer. Zodiac had their ceramic watches. They weren't really ceramic. They were white ceramic. It was a ceramic plate around stainless steel. That's how they kept the price down. But they had a very interesting, very only wear during the summer look. But it was kind of cool. It was sort of a hip thing. The whippersnappers, the non-Dennises out there, they probably loved that stuff. They're doing things, doing weird things, being weird, being like a micro brand. That that might be their hope, but I don't ever see them being what they were. The watch industry is so different now. They'll never become a luxury brand at the upper end. Like, you can't take Fossil. I say a Citizen has, they're the Citizen, and Seiko has, but again, Seiko broke them apart, so they're in the corporate umbrella, but they're different name, brands. Grand Seiko, Crador, different brands. Fossil doesn't have anything they don't, the bones to build this on. There's nothing there to it. Zodiac being in the luxury space, sure, but Zodiac ain't. I just don't see them building that where they would be a company that could ever start slinging $10,000+ watches. So they've just got to learn where they're at and be more competitive in that. And then my final thing would be, maybe sell whatever. If they've own or got ownership stake in STP, sell it, and then as a watch brand, just go back to focusing on using third-party movements and building watches with those, and going that angle. My only other suggestion would be to try and get STP into more watches and make up your loss issue by trying to become another major movement manufacturer. But again, the Chinese movement manufacturers that are already doing this produce so many movements in combination with the competition from Salida and the others. It's the Ronda and the rest. I don't think there's enough demand that they could really move a lot of movements. I think there are plenty of movement makers right now. I actually expect some of them to go away as mechanical watches dip again. Maybe not immediately, but I know Ariel Adams with a blog to watch has often postulated, and I agree with him on some things. And this is one I do think he's right on, that we're in a golden era right now. There are all these legacy watch movement manufacturers. They're selling to the micro brands right now because they've lost the need to sell to a lot of other watch brands, because the need for watch movements has dissipated as the desire for wrist computers has increased. At some point, the micro brands won't keep them afloat and they'll go away. And micro brands will probably, by and large, go away with that change. Perhaps I think they'll just raise their prices, and a few of them will linger on, or they'll just be like the Seagulls of the world will survive, and they'll continue to sell enough movements at a small enough quantity that a micro brand could afford them. But it won't be like it is now, where you're kind of spoiled for choice. That choice will go away. That's what I think. Anyway, that's the best I can suggest. What do you guys happen to think? Trap Vision says Fossil can't pivot in today's industry. It's too late for them. Ultimately, I'm afraid that you are correct. They'll never be what they were, ever. Could they survive? Sure. I think they could linger, like a shell of themselves, a ghost, basically, but never be what they once were. Fossil would be better off. He continues operating under Zodiac only. I think that's the one, just because it's the only one with real cachet with watch enthusiasts that has the potential to be profitable if it wasn't burdened by all the other brands that Fossil as a group are having to carry the load for. Thomas says, Dennis, do you think a brand or group would buy out any of the Fossil brands or the group as a whole? If so, who do you think would take a likely punt? Do I think any might buy them? Shucks. Not the whole group. No. A venture capital group, maybe. Like I'm thinking you're thinking a watch group. I don't think there's a watch group that wants Fossil. I do not. Here's what some venture capital group that thinks they can buy it and then what kind of liquidate it for money. That I could see, which I don't know the names of those groups, but we've seen them before where they kind of come in as locusts and they just kind of rip a company apart and sell the pieces. And in theory, they've made money because they sold the pieces for more than what they bought the whole thing for, which is, it's like if I were to sell my pinball collection. If I sell them one by one, I'm going to get more money than if I sell them as a group, because if someone's willing to take them all off your hands, you give them basically a discount. It's like that. But if Fossil were to liquidate bankruptcy, not do this Chapter 15 UK restructure, but actually had gone into liquidation, I bet you there is a brand that would love to buy Zodiac, even if it just got them the name, would buy Zodiac and take advantage of it. My go-to answer in that instance would be Breitling, since they're clearly desiring to scoop up all sorts of stuff like Universal Genève. Why not have a dive watch name in your stable, especially since there's been a lot of criticism that, they're taking, Universal Genève, they're positioning above Breitling, and Breitling ain't exactly a cheap brand. And I know that's been frustrating for some Universal Genève fans, because Universal Genève was not a more expensive than Breitling sort of brand. Didn't have that. It wasn't a luxury brand reputation, but Breitling has different designs for it. So that'd be my guess there, but that's about it. Hagfish, welcome to live stream. Say finally got to catch one. So glad you were able to make it, at least for the tail end of it. But he continues about Fossil. That Fossil was his gateway watch. I have a fake Fossil chronograph. Looks like a chrono, but is really just a 3-hander. But I love that being my first watch. More expensive than a Casio quartz. My mom, she was a registered nurse, and she's got like 24 quartz watches. I know, because I changed the battery on all of them a few years ago. And one of them was also a fake chronograph. I don't remember if it was a Fossil. It might have been. I know I have a Fossil in a baggie around here somewhere. And Hagfish asks, Dennis, would you buy a Zodiac watch yourself? You missed, because you just came in. You missed. I used to own one. I did. I bought the Super C Wolf Watermelon, and they still sell it. And I'm going to show it to you from the website. I'm not going to show you one of my photos, but I do have some photos and some B-roll footage that I took of the watch back when I had it. Yeah, when I got into collecting, it was after I started this channel. I picked up this one, the one that's called the Watermelon, the 3-hander STP movement. The first one I got was not well regulated. It had orange paint specks in the black areas on the chapter ring. I think there was even some of the black paint specks from the minute markers on the silver of the dial. There was dust contamination. Lume was great. Bezel action was great. They mineral crystal the bezel, but the dial is protected by sapphire. This clasp actually is stretchy in the clasp part. Still, I think that would be the one thing I'd say. Sell your bracelets to some of these other brands, Zodiac. Zodiac at the price point has the best bracelet I have experienced. It's better than Seiko. It's better than Citizen. It's better than Grand Seiko, bluntly. It's better than Orient. It's better than Tissot. Like that bracelet's going places. That they need to exploit that, sell that technology. It's a really nice bracelet. I sent it back. I bought it new. The dealer took it back and gave me another one. It still had some dust contamination, but it ran a lot better. But I ended up selling it. My issue was since it was over $1,000 even back then. I was just frustrated that for $1,000 it had so many flaws in it, but it wore pretty nice. Uh, and I still really like the aesthetic. I like how the baton hand looks. I like the rectangular hour markers, the applied logo, the applied indices. It was okay. It was interesting. It was an interesting experience. Not my worst watch by far, but have I thought about getting another one, not of this design, but I have thought about picking up another Zodiac. But I wouldn't. I told myself I'm not paying $1,000 for it. I want it for under 1,000. So maybe something used, maybe. But I also don't love dive watches. It's just not my thing. But but it is what it is. Hackfish goes, "Wow, your mom's base." I didn't know she had this many watches. I remember my dad had one watch growing up, which he doesn't wear a watch anymore. So he gave me his watch last year. I don't have it on my desk because I just put it away this morning, but I wore it yesterday. But he just had a Seiko. They weren't like watch people to my knowledge, but again, because the fashion aspect, those she would buy a bunch of different quartz watches to go with different sets of scrubs and stuff because she had different colors of scrubs for the hospital and all that. And so she just liked having that's just to her, it was just more jewelry. So, but she needed to be able to time things like taking pulses and stuff. So she needed a watch too. So she just ended up with, I think she had a Timex Iron Man. I mean, the variety was pretty vast. Yeah, I know she had one of those huge Timex uh, LCD watches. I don't know if I had the battery for that one, but I was able to get all the other ones running again. But just one of those things. Trapinson goes, Fossil should do a collab with Spinnaker and show up to every windup and micro brand events so they can reestablish a base with watch fans. Doing windups, just doing the windups in general could maybe get them a lot of mileage. They need to be able to tell a story that's interesting to a collector, though. So either get funky with it, like you know, Spinnaker 50 Phantom style, do some weird stuff, just weird dial stuff, or have something that's worth talking about with the movement. Something. But I don't know. Hagfish goes, with that Zodiac price, I'll stick to Tudor. Tudor and Longines, that's where a lot of people are sticking, and that's where Fossil is struggling. And Hagfish says, salute to your mom from me. Well, I'm sure she would appreciate it. She'll probably never know. I do not think she watches this channel. I do not suggest it to her because she does not collect watches. But that is it for me. I am going to go and do some chores. Very, very exciting life that I have to live this Saturday, but such is fate. Hope you all enjoyed the live stream. If you do, please click the like button. I often forget to say that, but it supposedly helps. I don't know. All the view stuff's down lately on the watch stuff. So, but I do this for fun, so that's okay. Other than that, if you're watching the recording and you have thoughts on Fossil, especially if you have ideas on what Fossil could do to save themselves, I'll comment them because honestly, I don't have any good ideas. I feel like they're kind of up a creek with no paddle, so to speak, to take a crib off of the alliteration. No, that's not an alliteration. Allegory. I don't know. Something with creeks. A water thing. That's it. All right, guys. I'll talk to you all. I should be back on the next Saturday with another live stream. Again, I'll pick the topic closer to that point. You can always leave a comment also suggesting what topic you'd like me to cover. Always happy to take suggestions. This one just seemed like a fun one to go ahead and do. But that's it. Talk to you next time. And until then, hope you all have a really good weekend. Take care.